Good afternoon and welcome to this seminar. And today we're going to be talking about asylum and refugee status in the United States. And I'm going to be telling you about how to apply for both forms of relief. People who are given asylum and refugee status are entitled to special legal protections under the U.S. immigration laws. And if you really do think that you are eligible, it's important that you contact a qualified immigration attorney who has handled matters of that sort. Because there are certain requirements for both forms of relief that you need to prove to the U.S. immigration, or basically the U.S. government. One key difference between asylum and refugee status is where you apply. Refugees must apply outside the United States, while people requesting asylum must apply within the U.S. or at a border. Here's an overview of an application process for asylum and refugee status. Applying for refugee status, you must find your way to a U.S. embassy or consulate, or preferably to an office in the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, which is UNHCR. There you will be asked to prepare and submit a form I-590 and other documents, including a promise by a U.S. sponsor, usually an organization to support your resettlement efforts. But that's not all. You'll be asked to provide proof of your persecution and a detailed affidavit explaining what happened and why you are afraid to return to your country. Normally, it's always good to get documents showing exactly what happened. I mean, if there are police reports, go down to the police station if you can get them and ask for those police reports. If you have witnesses, contact them before you travel and get documents, preferably notarized, but it's not really compulsory. Also, if your story was in a newspaper or anything, try and get the article, make a copy of it, and preferably bring the whole newspaper. And if there are other people around who are familiar with the act of persecution, just get them. Talk to them and ask them if they'll be willing to jot something on a piece of paper stating that you were persecuted. Now, the declaration is really important and should spell out the details of what has happened to you and what you fear would happen if you return, in a sense that you want to talk about how the incident occurred. If you were arrested, the time of arrest, where you were, how many people were there, how you were taken from where you were to whether a jail or whether a detention center. These are really important facts because there's a lot of fraud in this area. You also want to be, as I said, you really want to be very detailed. Now, after submitting your application, you will meet with an overseas asylum officer, that's if you're applying for a refugee status, who will make a decision on your case. If approved, you'll be given a visa that you can use to enter the United States. If your application for refugee status is denied, there is no opportunity for appeal, and that's the bad thing about refugee status. Now, applying for asylum status depends on whether you are at a U.S. border or port of entry, or whether you're in the United States. Now, if you are at the U.S. border or airport and have a valid visa or entry documents, it's best to use that to enter without raising the issue of your need for asylum. If, however, U.S. officials don't want to let you in, you can explain that you fear returning to your home country and ask to apply for asylum. At that point, things will move very quickly. You may be put into a detention facility while you wait to be sent to a credible hearing with a USCIS officer, which usually happens within a day or two. The officer does not have to have the power to approve your request for asylum, only to describe. Only to decide whether you truly seem to be afraid of persecution and therefore deserve to have a judge hear your case. However, the officer has the power to deny people's requests and send them home without further appeals. If you convince the asylum officer that you have a credible fear of persecution, you'll get no more than 7 days to prepare to see an immigration officer. And that's why sometimes it's really important to get the documents before you come into the country. And and seeing an immigration officer, seeing an immigration judge is not normally an easy thing, because these are judges who are really experienced, and there won't, apart from the judge being there, there'll be a trial attorney for the government who's going to ask you a lot of questions. So you really need to be prepared. I would suggest that if you have the finances, you contact an attorney immediately and have a professional represent you. Or if you can't, ask if there's a pro bono attorney available who can help you. Now, if you're in the United States, if you're successful and you make it past the border or point of entry into the United States, you'll have more time to apply for asylum. In fact, you can take up to a year after entering the United States to start the process, because the rule is you have a year to apply for asylum from the time of arrival. The first step in applying for asylum would be for you to fill out a form called an I-589 and mail it to the USCIS together with other documents you'll be asked to provide. One of the most important will be a detailed affidavit which needs to contain specific facts that you'll be asked to provide. Facts like what I mentioned in the past about what happened to you and why you have a fear of going back, which should be dealt with in detail. Within weeks of submitting the application, you'll be called in, and a letter will be sent to you, and you'll be asked to come in to do your fingerprints. And after doing your fingerprints, you'll be scheduled for an interview before an asylum officer. The asylum officer, during the asylum interview, most of the time, there will be an asylum officer, you, and if possible, if you don't speak English, preferably, I would advise you to take somebody who can interpret for you. The interview normally takes about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how difficult your case is to analyze by the officer. I usually call them education officers, even though they're asylum officers. After the interview, the asylum officer will give you a piece of paper which will tell you when you need to come back to get your decision. Normally, decisions are rendered within 3 to 4 weeks. At that point, upon you arriving or upon you coming back to get your decision, it will either be your case has been granted or your case has been denied. If your case is denied, then the next process would be for you to go before an immigration judge to present your case. For more information about asylum, filing for asylum and refugee status, I would advise you to contact us. Our phone number is 510-788-4558, or you can reach us at usimmigrationattorney.com and ask for a qualified attorney. Have a nice day, everybody.